So we've got Jamie Boyle on the podcast today. Thank you, Jamie, for coming. Honestly, I can't tell you how excited I am to have you
No
on the
problem.
podcast, mate. We've also got your book here. So for those who don't know, Jamie Boyle is a prolific true crime author. He's very well respected in that field. So firstly, Jamie, if we can talk a little bit about, I'm very interested in Middlesbrough. I've no idea why, but I seem to have a
Have you
magnet.
ever been?
No, but I want to go up to Middlesbrough and I want to see all these places that I've read in this book because I couldn't get them out of my head. I was waking up in the night thinking about some of these stories, what was in this book. That's how much it was in my mind.
But you know what? When you go, mate, give me a shout and I'll take you around.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does get a. I mean, you know, I when I did that book in 2018. So this is an opinion. This is officially that Middlesbrough was the capital of knife crime in Great Britain, and I don't know whether it was last year or the start of this year. Officially, it got voted the most pound for pound, the most violent place in I don't know if it was England or Great Britain, but it certainly kind of breeds them kind of characters, if you like.
Yeah, back in the 90s and stuff like that, with a lot of Duffy, Lee Duffy, we will go into a little bit. He died in 91, didn't he? Was it August 1991? Yeah.
Yeah.
There's something about that era and in the 80s where they all kind of went down the Labour Club every weekend and drinking in clubs and pubs and stuff like that. And they had some really big characters and some real hardmen, didn't they? And I've loved just reading this book and reading other people's experiences of all these hardmen and Paddy Maloney and all these names kind of coming up to my mind as well. So why did you first become an author, mate?
One reason, Paul Sykes. So I watched. I mean, I've always been interested in, obsessed with football. Quite a good player as a kid. Many Palmos ago, and that's the Middlesbrough dish, by the way. Yeah, and I kind of got involved with amateur boxing as a kid, as a schoolboy, and so I've always been obsessed with. I've been a bit of a boxing anorak, if you like. So someone said to me in June 2012, when you get a minute, type in Paul Sykes at large. So I did. You know, so I've always been interested in true crime, Jack the Ripper, Cray Twins, Jack Spot Comer and all this. And because I was a huge anorak, if you like, a real historian, I was like, how have I never heard of him? So watch a documentary. So back in them days, there was only half of it on YouTube. So I think I bought it on a disc, full 56 minutes of it. And then I read Sweet Agony, and I kind of describe it, to be honest, as just walking into the story, meeting all the characters, and kind of, obviously I did 3 books. Paul done the first one, Sweet Agony. I did Unfinished Agony, Further Agony, Final Agony. There's been a couple. It's Sharks by Rob Brenton. That's Warcry Publishing. And there's another one, Yes, Paul. That was by Matthew Oakley, which is Warcry Publishing. I'm led to believe there's another one. So I think there's certainly 6, but there's 4 kind of ones. Obviously, Paul's done 1. I've done 3. So if you wanna learn a story, you've got to really read them books, if you like. Now, bearing in mind, Paul's book only covers from March 77 to June 79. You know, if you Google him, like I did, I've seen what he was, and I found out what he died. You know, tramp kids smashing eggs on him, setting him fire to him. But I wanted to know what happened. I knew of him, I knew he died, but it didn't quite add up. And I wanted to know how someone as scary and as fierce and ferocious and damn right just fascinating went, a gush of wind could have blew him over. And, you know, I dare say the city of Wakefield were fabulously offended because I kind of came along. He'd been dead 5 years. I kind of walked the ghost up, if you like. I stuck my head in a beehive, and you know, a lot of the things is the evil things he did. I wasn't even born, but a lot of people kind of held it against me, if you like, and then obviously a film company come along, Western Edge Pictures, in 2017. Was it 2007? Oh, I think. Yeah, I think. Anyway, it was a long time ago. So the film was going to get made in 2020, and COVID come along, ruined it. Then the cost of living and everything, and it's been put back. I'm told it's the next thing on Western Edge Pictures. It's on their website now. People are going, "Oh no, it's not going to happen. You're full of crap." Just have a look. Western Edge Pictures, Paul Sykes film. The script is being written by Leo Bill, and I always get the film director and the actor who's going to play mixed up, so I need to be careful. Vaughan Civil. And so the script is written from my research. The film starts on September the 11th, 1989. The film's actually going to be called Paul Sykes at Large, which is exactly what the documentary is. And how big and successful that is, I don't know. You know, they're talking about a £2 million budget. And the last update I had, it's probably going to be near enough £1 million now. Duran was spoken about the soundtrack. They priced themselves out of it. But Dead Man's Shoes cost next to nothing. I think that was something like 260,000 to make all in.
What a film!
So,
as well.
Yeah, so you know how good that is. So I'm told it's going to film in Wakefield, Leeds, and Pontefract. I'm going to be a technical advisor.
Excellent.
And you know, a few actors from This Is England have kind of been approached. Yeah, so kind of God ruined it, if you like. The COVID, you know, that's the world's kind of just got knocked sideways, if you like. But it's still very much happening. The last time I spoke to Western Edge Pictures, they said, "Look, this is nothing. You know, films can take forever." So it's going to happen, basically. And I don't know whether it will go straight in the bargain bin, or I don't know whether it'll be a smash hit and it'll be at Leicester Square. I don't know, but I know it's definitely happening.
Yeah, I remember seeing a video. You was in a caravan with someone, and you were discussing who would be a good actor and things like that for it. And that was going back some time now, so it's been going on a while. This, hasn't it? This. But yeah, I'd definitely watch.
So basically my publishers rang me 2017, I think July 2017. So what's over 7 years now. Wow. And that was my very first book. I didn't even know whether I was any good. I didn't know whether I'd make a tenner off it. And, you know, I didn't know whether I'd be laughed out the literacy world. And it was an Amazon bestseller. Well, they all were.
Yeah.
And it was, you know, it knocked Tyson Fury's book off in the Amazon thing. It knocked Jimmy Tibbs off. Mike Tyson's in the Amazons for boxing.
Yeah.
And, you know, anyone doesn't believe that, if you have a look at the Paul Sykes or the Jamie Boyle Facebook pages, I screenshot them, and I couldn't believe it. And I'd never believed my publisher for about a month when they rang up and said, "Look, so-and-so's rang looking for you and your books," and it just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And, you know, the interest is basically, it is Paul Sykes. You know, it's you know, I mean, he's a hugely interesting, fascinating, one-off, unique character, and I just kind of went along and stuck my fat face in places that people probably weren't thrilled about. But at the end of the day, he's a real life character,
Yeah,
It happened.
totally.
It's not nothing to do with me. It's not my fault.
Yeah,
And it always makes me laugh, like Tom Hardy played the Craze, so it's fine. And the Craze were absolute menaces and cold-blooded murderers.
yeah,
Some of the characters I've did on your Roy Shaws, your Dominic Neguses, your Lee Duffys, your Paul Sykes, they never killed anyone.
yeah,
But because the Kemp played the Craze and it's all glamorous, and how many Essex Boys films has there been? It's a part of social history. I could go on and on. Your Paul Ferris, he was tried for murder and acquitted, and Charles Bronson's 50 years, and there's so many of these real life old villains, if you like. They've had the films. If I sat and thought about it, there's been so many, and fair enough, a lot of them have flopped. I think there will be a time when Lee Duffy will be a film.
yeah.
It's
Hasn't
it's
there already,
just
hasn't there already been a Lee Duffy film? Because there was the gentleman from Middlesbrough, weren't there? He played him.
so no, that was a film on the Sears in Newcastle.
Says, yeah,
And basically Paul Venice, whose book I did a couple of years ago, I think he had a very short part, and he played the part of Lee Duffy. I actually did 2 documentaries on him as well.
I've watched them.
Um,
Fantastic,
yeah,
by the way, on
and
Amazon.
do you know, I did 3 documentaries. My 4th, I am planning on doing a Mickey Duff one. But it's funny because they would never have. I mean, I did one on a character, a Middlesbrough character, I don't want to mention, and I did one on the Sue Duffy. But none of them documentaries would have happened if I could have did something on Sykes. And the reason being was we've signed a contract which basically says we cannot, under any circumstance. I'm okay doing, having small chats on podcasts or whatever,
Yeah,
but we've basically signed a promise, and that's the reason why there's certainly never been a Lee Duff, a Paul Sykes documentary, is because obviously we've basically got a written contract which says, and they have to plan on doing a documentary and a film. So, and there's a lot of the characters from that, particularly with the Sykes one. People who've read Sweet Agony, your Davy Dumfords, your Ronnie Trelfalls, your John Spenceys, they're no longer here.
yeah,
So a lot of the characters that, the first names that you'd go to speak with on a documentary, or your Delroy Showers, he's still about, but he certainly wouldn't speak to. He kind of trusts me, and he's given me a couple of interviews, but he's certainly he's very skeptical about people who contact him, and so that's the reason basically why there was never a Paul Sykes documentary, because I'd have probably did 2 on him, like I did with the Duffy ones. It's certainly such a massive just character. You just can't get your head around. And I think Duffy is as well, because obviously, when you go in the Waterstones and you look at the books on the shelves, your Freddie Foremans and the Craze, they all lived very old, and they got to an old age.
yeah,
And what's unique about the Duffy story was he died so young,
yeah,
and he had a reputation which was awesome, to put it mildly. He was around in a time, 1990, 91, when 50% of the population didn't have phones. And I always remember Dominic Negus saying to me, I was on a door in Essex or London or somewhere, and someone came up and threatened him with the name Lee Duffy, which is quite remarkable, considering there was no social media. So and there'll never be a character like him again, because obviously you get 5 years without a bullet these days. So society's changed. There's cameras everywhere, and that's the way with Paul Sykes. There's a guy who he had O levels, he had A levels, he had a degree, I mean, that's by no means exaggerating. That is a fact.
Yeah.
But he also had a huge love for punching people's lights out.
Yeah.
He, I remember Delroy Showers said to me once, we'd be having a night out, a nice meal, the ladies and nice weather and glasses of wine, and nice music. And all of a sudden you've just heard bang. And then you just heard bang. Sykes has hit someone. They've hit the floor. And now the police and the ambulances are on the way and they have to go.
Yeah.
And that was just something that he couldn't contain himself. No matter how hard he tried, he just, I don't know, was he mad? Was he bad?
Yeah.
I don't know, but just normal people in life just didn't do the things that Paul Sykes did or Lee Duffy. And I think that's what's so fascinating about the likes of them.
Me
is
too.
you read about them, but they were absolutely fantastic to study because they were so out of touch with reality that, most of us are like, well, I can't do that because I'm going to get arrested. And it just didn't enter their brain capacity. It just didn't enter their vocabulary. It was just bang, and then worry about it later. And of course, their names in Northern England, certainly, particularly in the late 80s, 1991, of course, there was no bigger names in Northern England, particularly in the prison grapevine world, if you like. Duffy and Sykes, and obviously there was a full generation between them, 19 years in total, but they were very aware of each other, but they only ever met twice. So all this kind of nonsense of people sitting on YouTube and making fabricated tall stories up is just that's exactly what it is, tall stories.
Especially with the prison, when Lee Duffy's been in prison, there seems to be a lot of stories on YouTube of, talking him down, that he wasn't a nothing, and there's also a couple of good stories as well that, he's someone who had a fight with him. I seen a comment, someone had a fight with him, and then he's seen him again a few years later, and Lee Duffy was absolutely massive, and there's no way he would ever kind of, come to blows with him again. But there's a lot of nonsense online. It does wind me up because I've nowhere near on your level, but I've studied it so much, and you can see people are factually incorrect with what they're saying. But that you could write just on him in jail, couldn't you?
The sad thing is, I mean, I could do a video now, making things up, outrageous things, and slandering people's names and defamation them, and it would have 10,000 views in. I could do a video for 2 minutes. And £2.20 per 1,000 views. So I could probably make 30 quid in 2 minutes. And basically, that's how life is in the 21st century. But I spoke to a prison officer who was actually got in between them. So it was about March 88. And then I spoke to the guy who held Duffy when he died, and I spoke to John Spenceley, who was there. And this was about a month before Duffy died, and there was a bit of almost a Western standoff, if you like, in the Havana. And for years, Paul Sykes would say to John Spenceley, "I only ever met that kid from Borough twice," and he'd relay the stories. And I could probably make stuff up, but I'm just going on what Duffy's close friends told me, not someone who knew him for 8 weeks, or not, and basically Sykes's best friends. I seen the book where Sykes signed Sweet Agony to John Spenceley, and it said, "To the greatest man I've ever met." And a lot of the stories that came first. I mean, John sadly died, I think, at the end of last year or the start of this year. And his memory was incredible. And he would just sit and tell me so many stories. And, him, along with Tommy Miller, were the sole reason why Sykes was granted his boxing license in 77. because Yorkshire had a different governing body, and they basically, when he got out in March '77, said, "Look, if you move to Middlesbrough, we'll put you in front of the board," because he was knocked back in '73. Yeah, and then he done another armed robbery in Haverton Hill, which is just outside Middlesbrough. Got 5 years. I think he did about 4 of it, because he never got parole, Sykes. And basically, and then it was for John Spenceley and Tommy Miller, who said, "Look, we'll put our names to him." And you know, I mean, I found the letter in the Boxing News from his mother, basically saying, you know, the only thing Paul can do is fight. And basically the boxing board, I mean, that was the time basically when Sykes should have, he would have been, you know, he got out in '73 and he sparred with Joe Fraser, which I've got the footage on the War Cry Publishing channel. And he sparred with Bunny Johnson in the Thomas of Becket, who was a British champion at the time. And if he'd have been given his license, I think Sykes at the time will have been about 27. Then that was the perfect time. It was just, so when he got out, let me think. So he got out and he was nearly 31. So he had his first fight in February, and he was nearly 32 then, I think. So he basically had a good go of it. But, you know, when he fought John L. Gardner, he was 33-year-old. And these days in boxing, that's not that old. But 45 years ago, because of all the strength and conditioning these days, that was ancient. And John L. Gardner, when he, the day before the fight, John L. Gardner was 26, and he said, "There's no way I'm letting an old man beat me." And he was just past his best then. And, you know, your Tommy Millers and your George Biddles, they had a huge... So basically how Sykes was going to be fast-tracked was, so if he'd have beat John L. Gardner, he was going to fight Leon Spinks at the back end of '79, and then if he'd have beat him, he was going to fight Larry Holmes in 1980. Obviously, it's all farcical. It's all a what if, but that was the plan. Leon Spinks had won the world title after 7 fights, beat Muhammad Ali, who was completely shot to bits then. But of course, he just he just won Olympic gold, and Leon Spinks actually paid for Sykes to come over February '78, and back then Sykes was 6'3", and boxers these days are all 6'6", 6'9", but back then there wasn't that many a big heavyweight was probably 6 foot, 6'1". So 6'3" was huge. George Foreman 6'3", Muhammad Ali 6'3". So basically Leon Spinks paid for 2 weeks for Sykes to come over. So he was chief support for when Leon Spinks beat Muhammad Ali. So that just shows how well thought of within the boxing industry Sykes was. You know, but for them 2 years, he was kind of putting Wakefield on the map. But of course, he's known now for a very, very different reason. And, you know, when that film happens, whatever it may be, I think he will again, for whatever good or bad, he will put Wakefield on the map. Because in my head, you know, Wakefield was never a place of interest. So I went in 2012, a boxing show, and then I watched that 2012. Yeah, I went to Wakefield, and then a couple of months after, and I know Wakefield very, very well now. And for those years in 2015, 16, 17, 18, I was there every week. I probably went to Wakefield maybe 20, 25 times, and as I said, you know, I've met people who absolutely loved him and they've literally cried in front of me. And then I've met the people who said, oh, don't mention his name. Oh, you give me shivers there. Don't mention that man's name to me. So, as I said, I didn't know him. But Wakefield, whatever reason, he will never be forgot for whatever reason, whether it's good or bad. He'll always be spoken about in this lifetime.
Yeah, folklore. Is it written in folklore, aren't there? Can I just jump back and say, I know what you've just been talking about there, but when I read this book, I find it is completely unbiased, and there's so many good stories in there, and some people love him, some hate him, some think he was a coward, some think he was brilliant and he helped them out in really difficult times, and you can really see that in the book. I don't think there's any bias at all, because I know that some criticism over certain things, but I don't see it at all in my opinion. I think whatever somebody said, you've completely put in. It's perfect. That is the best book I've ever read, hands down. That.
Do you know what? It sounds really big-headed, but there's so many people who've said that. And I can say it now because the manager's left. But the manager in Waterstones, when that come out in 7 years ago, this last month, 30 was stolen. 30 was stolen. And that's the biggest selling book in that shop by a local author. And I'll never forget, I was in a pub once. I mean, I don't know how much it is now. I think the publishers charge $14.95 for it.
Yeah,
but back then it was something like $12.95 and £1 went to charity. So I was in a pub in Middlesbrough once, and this, you know, heroin addicts, shoplifters come in and went, "Hey, mate, do you want to buy this book of Father?" You know, and I was like,
asked you
whose name?
Buy your own book.
Whose name's that on the book? By Jamie Boyle. But no, do you know what? I mean, listen, it didn't affect me because it's not my job for Middlesbrough Waterstones to police their own shop.
Yeah.
So if anything, it was a good thing. But you know, because it was in demand, it was just absolutely crackers. And that manager said to me, that first couple of months, that book literally walked out the shop. It was crackers.
Yeah.
I don't think. So I've got 4 books finished at the minute. I've released 22. Nick Manners, Junior Witter, Michael Showers, Ray Morton. So I'm doing Mickey Duff, so that's 27. Brian Clough will be 28. So I'm definitely going to do at least 30 books.
Wow.
But I don't think I will ever be involved with a book that just causes that much excitement, drama, and mayhem. I've literally had people ringing me up saying, "Oh, I've just rang work and said I was ill, like they're nicking off school." And I just read it. You know, that book was crackers. And it was, you know, whatever. I think I give a lot of people a book hangover. And what a book hangover is when you've read it, and for the first couple of days afterwards, you just can't stop thinking about that book.
Yeah, totally.
And I'm going to be honest, the Blood Moon is probably even better. Oh. And the guy who was Duffy's best friend, and I mean really, really close, I'm not going to name him. I think people will probably know who he is.
Yeah.
You know, the guy who spent 10 months on remand for the conspiracy to murder him. He's serving double life now. And he said to me, he said, I read it in my cell and I just sat crying. You just brought all the... He said, you got that absolutely bang on. The guy who held him when he died said, you got that. So that means more to me than some half-wit who knew him for 8 weeks. Yeah. And, you know, just kind of making stuff up for views. So I really did my homework. You know, I mean, Duffy died 91. I first walked into a boxing gym 92. And so I kind of grew up with a lot of his friends, if you like, and a lot of the victims. Yeah. You know, the Middlesbrough boxing industry. Middlesbrough has a population of 149,000, but across Teesside, I think it's 277,000. Or it might be 370. Anyway, and but relatively, the boxing world's quite a small place. So I knew a lot of people in that world, or I grew up on the council estate, if you like, and so I started going into pubs when I was 16. I mean, I looked 14, but I had fake ID. You can't do it these days, but because you need all proper stuff. But back then, if you've got fake ID, and so I was in the pubs regular from 97, 98, 99, 97. So that was only like six and a half years after he died.
Yeah.
So I knew a lot of his closest friends, enemies, whatever you want to call it. And, being in a pub anywhere in Middlesbrough and that song coming on, The Whole of the Moon, within seconds, you can hear someone say the name, Lee Paul Duffy. And that's what I did. I used that song as a vehicle. And that vehicle, you mentioned that song, even not in people in Britain, anywhere, even, I said to the wife, look at that. And there's someone on YouTube last night I had a look at from Russia. And all his text is Russian, which is not even the English dictionary. The kind of like almost made up letters. And he's speaking in Russian, and all you can hear is him saying, now then, Lee Duffy. And I looked at the wife and I'm like, I've caused all that. So it's funny. It's funny sometimes, some of the people, I've told the story. Look, Ricky Gervais is absolutely obsessed with
I didn't know
Paul
that.
Sykes.
Right.
Obsessed with Paul Sykes. Who else? Jamie Carragher, obsessed with Paul Sykes. Who else? The League of Gentlemen. Vic Reeves and Bob Mortimer. They've actually did comedy sketches on Dennis Flint. I've sent them books, and Man O'Neill's read them. The old football manager, Bruce Rioch, he's read them. He remembers the name Duffy because he was the manager in Middlesbrough till March 1990. So, there's so many people like I've come across, famous boxers or footballers, and they've just wanted to talk to me. I was actually in London in December. I was sleeping rough with Alex Reid, the MMA fighter. And I was walking through Piccadilly Circus, and this bloke went, I know you. And I went, and he went, yeah, and he just wanted to talk to me about Lee Duffy and Paul Sykes. And that guy was from Greece, and he was on holiday in London. And I was just like, whoa. Crackers.
We're a little part of the start of your book when you found out that Lee Duffy, as a 10-year-old child, I think he was, and you found out that he died, and someone shouted from the window, and it was like you perceived him as some kind of superhuman person at that time.
I was 11, and so that guy will have been about 17, 18, and he come out of his house, and I was 11. I had a Celtic kit on, had a ball, I was going to play football, and he was like, whoa, Lee Duffy was killed last night, and he never knew him, and I didn't know him. I'd heard of him, and I was like, well, why is it bothering me? And it was just, I'll never forget it. for 2 weeks after, it was like I don't want to sound over dramatic, but it was like what I imagined JFK in America, or John Lennon died in Middlesbrough and Teesside. It was just, I went to secondary school, and the teachers were talking about it, and it was like people who didn't know him, and my mum and dad were talking about it, and they didn't know him, but just everyone knew that name. And that in itself is a sign of success. As I said in the documentary, notoriety in itself as a form of success, because we're all selfish human beings.
Yeah.
We're only interested in ourselves. So for someone to sit and talk about you and or buy books and read about you or watch documentaries, it's absolutely massive. And to sit and almost let it affect your mood.
Yeah.
It's never happened to me since or before. Princess Diana died. I mean, I was 17, and I'm not really a royal, but I remember and that's certainly in Middlesbrough and Teesside. And that's never. Funny enough, it was 33 years ago this week since his funeral. I think I put some on. So there's a Facebook page, a Lee Duffy page, which I was actually going to delete. I've got 14 Facebook pages. So they're all like designed to promote a book or whatever. And, the projects are all done now, the 3 books, the 2 documentaries. And I was going to delete it. And it's crackers. People just, no, you can't.
Yeah.
And
I follow it as well.
Do you follow it as well?
Yeah. I love the little stories that come in and the little comments and stuff. I love it, mate.
Yeah. And I can put stuff on the Alan Thompson one, who's a footballer, or the Mickey Duff one, or Junior Witter one, or Jack the Ripper ones, other ones I've got, and just get 2 or 3 likes. And Duffy's is just goes crackers. I'm not really that prolific on it anymore, but there's just been so many people that have almost said to me, "Don't you dare delete that." And it's social history, if you like. It kind of reminds people from Middlesbrough of once upon a time, and a lot of people refer to it as the Lee Duffy era. That kind of, the Havana, the music, the Middlesbrough were beating Newcastle 4-1. England had, he just got out in May 1990. England were going to the World Cup. Adamski's Killer was number 1. So many different things. And of course, Duffy had just got out and ready to kind of wreak havoc on Middlesbrough for the last 16 months. And what a journey it was. And 33 years on, and we're talking about. Can I just ask how old you are?
At 29.
What year were you born?
95.
So you weren't even born when he was about.
Exactly. And he's massive now, isn't he? All these years on. I mean, I've just met someone from Middlesbrough who's been watching my channel. He's a good guy as well. Shout out to Andy Richardson. And even he's got a story on him. And he said, "Oh, I've seen him. He used to be when he was a bouncer. He never gave me any trouble. He was nice to me." And everybody just knows him and has a story of him or something. I'm a bit like you. It's not just about knocking people out all the time. They have something about them. They have this aura. Same with Brian Clough. Same with Paul Sykes. They're so intelligent. Like Paul Sykes, so intelligent. There's something more. There's so much more to them than just being a herdman, isn't there?
I remember. Well, basically, his best mate said to me, belonged in a time where when there's no money and the currency is just swapping goats and all that and cows and that. Yeah. See, 9 times out of 10, he'd have a pair of shorts on, and a lot of the times he wouldn't even have pockets, and he'd just go out for days and he wouldn't need any money. And so that that picture you see where he's on his car, so that was taken about 6 weeks before he died, and that was his nightclub outfit. And Dominic Negus said to me, he said, I would do it all the time in Essex. I'd go out like that because it's basically up yours to the bouncers. It's like, I dare you to say something to me and I'll wipe you all out. And he would just basically go in, licensed premises and like that, or sometimes if he wanted to be really well dressed, he'd wear a vest. But yeah, just quite incredible, really. The arrogance, the self-charisma, if you like, the self-confidence. But yeah, a totally unforgettable character, regardless of whether you despised him or liked him. And I've met so many people, and with Sykes as well, you know, for that matter. Oh, I only met him once, and it's almost like a JFK moment. It's almost like when they seen the Abominable Snowman or Bigfoot. Oh, well, I met him once, and yeah, you know what I mean? And I never met him, but I knew of him and I'd heard of him. I'd heard of him when I was 8, and I believed in Santa Claus till I was 9. That's gospel truth.
Yeah.
And obviously, when I was 10 and 11 in 1991, it was a weekly occurrence. And I would, because I used to hang around with a lot. So when I was like 10, 11, I would play football with kids a lot older than me. And they'd just talk about him, and I'd just listen. And then I'd repeat the stories to other people.
Yeah.
And that's how it was in Middlesbrough. You know, and then kind of when he died, I remember going around the next couple of days and seeing, you could still kind of see what was left. And of course, in the papers so much. So, yeah, it's just things like that. You know, I don't know whether life's changed so much or society itself has changed, you know, but it's just an unforgettable time. You know what I mean? I just don't see, I can't remember things like that happening, and it just stays with you. And, you know, whether so many people have sounds big-headed, but been captivated with that book. And people have begged me and said, "Oh, you've got to do another." And truth be told, I could have done a load of books. Right. You know, when I did, I don't know whether you've listened to the BBC Viv Graham documentary at the start of the year.
You've just done that, haven't you? I've seen a picture of it or something. I will give it a listen.
Yeah, I mean, I was obviously asked from the Duffy contingent, but in fact, they didn't put any of that. I did a few. Most of my work was behind the scenes. I kind of relayed a story of what Alan Thompson, where I did the book, if you like. But they didn't use any of it. But there was talk of, you know, I know they've done series on Paul Massey or the Berg, and you know, I'm kind of done with true crime, to be honest. But every now and again, I'll get some kind of message saying, "Will you do this or will you do that?" And I'm trying to get as far away from. I'm kind of done. You know, it's not a nice environment. It's not.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm done, to be honest. It's kind of. I'm quite happy with what I did. The 3 books, The Whole of the Moon, The Blood Moon, and A Very South Bank Story. We did the Whole of the Moon documentary, and we did the Too Far Too Soon documentary. And I'm sure someone will come along. You know, I read about 2 months ago that there's someone on Twitter planning on doing a Duffy book, and I'm like, good luck. But I wonder whether you get the shit I got.
Yeah.
But yeah, they will not end. You know, there was because it's that interesting. That's not just me saying it. That's, you're literally talking about tens of thousands of people, and I'm talking about book sales there as well, and documentary and views and all. That's tens of thousands have watched it and been, and it's not diminishing. It's not getting any. If anything, it's only snowballing and going greater and greater. And yeah, when the Sykes film comes out, and I'm sure other people will do books on him eventually. I hope they do. But I would like to read them. And I'll never tire of the Lee Duffy story or the Sykes story or the Jack the Ripper story. You know, as I said, the real life, the once upon a time. And once upon a time means it's a fable, it's untrue. But once upon a time, it did really, really happen in Wakefield and in Middlesbrough.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to give too much away of this book because obviously people need to read it. But I mean, he also had that side to him, Lee, where the guy at the taxi rank who owns the taxis, and the taxi drivers were throwing all the fans away, and I think his wife got locked up, and Lee came down with a bucket of money or something to get his wife bailed out, and that person speaks so high, wouldn't hear a bad word said about him, would he? And it's those stories as well, that because there's just such a mixture, kind of your emotions are up and down. Like the ending, obviously, the ending is absolutely devastating. It does bring you to tears. And some of the stories were, when I was reading before bed, I'd be waking up at night and visually it's going through my mind. So it really has an impact. It's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, I met them all, and just because I didn't. I mean, all I'm going to say is, when you think of the name Duffy, the opposite name worked it out. I spoke with several times, and just because I haven't announced it doesn't mean I never got what they told me. And you know, I met the guy who poured the petrol on him, and as I was talking to him, I could notice all his bottom teeth were missing, and that was from that incident. I spoke to the guy who broke his neck, and you can't paper up the cracks. There was some, I don't know, he was just I think if he'd have lived, he was certainly looking at coming out of prison, and he was looking at massive time.
Yeah.
And even if they'd have believed his account of, well, the bouncer started on me, you just can't go around breaking people's necks. And he was 26, then he'd have come out in his 30s, and I don't know. Would he calm down? I don't know. But he was a young lad, and at the end of the day, the people who kind of slayed him, he paid the ultimate price.
Yeah.
And you know, as I said, written in the introduction, that come to the forefront when I was at his grave. I was 26. I didn't even think of becoming an author until I was 35. So it was very powerful and thought provoking. But yeah, you know, I've done some massive stupid mistakes, and I've lived to turn my life around. I've lived through addictions, been in prison, all that kind of nonsense, to the point where I see some people now, and I actually think it was cool to hang around with them, where now I'll cross the road. I lived long enough to put my rights. Do you know what I mean? And I always say, if he'd have been here now, what we're in now, 65, so he'd have been 59. What more powerful message to the youth of today if he'd have been here with the bullet holes and to say, look, I was the baddest of the bad, but that it's a load of nonsense.
Yeah.
He would have surely been a millionaire. Do you know what I mean? He could have been such a vehicle for people like him. But of course, you know, but then again, you know, if it never happened that night, I believe it was written in the stars. And there's a lot of, I've spoke to people personally who were plotting things. And he wouldn't, you know, his mum said, you know, if he'd have got a 30, I always knew I was going to lose him, but I'd have thought he'd have got a 30. Yeah. And, you know, but I think the most frightening statistic was he was 5 years off his prime. So, you know, if he'd have got a 31, how many more lives would he have affected? We'll never know. And then, you know, here we are 33 years on talking about him. And, you know, even Sykes was 60-year-old, but he looked 98.
Yeah.
You know, if he'd done any wrong in life, then I'm not exaggerating by saying he was paid back 1,000 times. There's no glamour in it, is there? You know, to be, as I said, 60-year-old, and that picture where you see him with the jazz hands and all the coats.
Yeah.
So that was November 2004. So he'd have been 58, and he looked 88.
Yeah.
So you know, the life really went through full circle, and you know, it was a unimaginable ending what he got. Did he deserve it? I don't know. I didn't know him. Some people revelled in it. The Wakefield paper put him in the paper every week. You know, they've got nothing to print. Oh, we'll just stick Paul in. But you know, that's why the characters are so fascinating. Just what made them behave the way it did? Was it something in the childhood? Of course, they were both bullied. Duffy tremendously. And then obviously Sykes was an emotionally damaged youth, and his parents, in my opinion, were probably about 85% to blame for that. Not his dad as well, both parents.
Really, I didn't know about it because his mum said that she'd have hung him, didn't she, when he first got into trouble?
Yeah, she was like a man almost. She had like size 9 feet, and she was a wicked tongue, and yeah, she was a nasty piece of work to say the least. But yeah, but is there any questions? Are we doing a live here? Is there any questions or?
No, we're not doing a live, mate. It's just recorded, and then I'll put it out on my channel.
Yeah.
There.
Well, listen. We could do another. As I said, if you put it out on your channel, I'll give it a share. And it's been an absolute pleasure, mate. And if there's any more times you want me on, we can chat about whatever.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, Jamie. I really do. Honestly, it's the best guest. I only want people I'm interested in, and if there's anyone who I'm interested in, it's you, mate. So thank you very much, and stay in touch with me.
No, my absolute pleasure, mate. If you need anything, you've got my number, mate. Thank you so much. Have a great weekend, sir.
You too, mate. See you later, pal.
God bless, mate. Bye.